Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. For those who don't know where I am, I'm up here on Mount Tomaree on this magnificent morning, and I love coming up here every time I'm up here at Nelson Bay. I love coming for a walk up here on Mount Tomaree, and Mount Tomaree is the southern mountain, the southern entrance to Port Stephens, and the one on the other side, which you can't see from where I'm sitting here now, is named Mount Yakabar. So Mount Tomaree and Mount Yakabar are the two mountains that welcome ships into the harbour. What I'd like to do today is to continue my progression in terms of producing content and episodes to celebrate the great man Tony Robbins, because what I'm doing is that I'm putting together a sub-series of 365 videos entitled All That I've Learnt from Tony Robbins Over the Years. And what I want to do today is I want to talk about something that he mentioned at UPW 23, and I've got my notes here, and if I look at my notes here, the very bottom line is where he says that it's important to understand that we're not always competing against other people, but the most important person to compete against is yourself, and not to compete against other people just for the sake of competing, but to compete with other people in order to facilitate the growth and development and betterment of one's self. I remember years ago when I used to be an avid golf player, and I've done lots of things throughout my life, and golf is one of those things. And I used to stay up late at night watching the Masters and the US Open and all of these, the British Open, the Australian Open, and all of the great golfing competitions that were being played throughout the years, where great players like Greg Norman, Tiger Woods, Ernie Els, and you name it, Seve Ballesteros, lots and lots of great players have played the game. And I remember watching the Masters at Augusta. That was my favourite golf game that I'd always try and watch every year. Get up early in the morning and just watch a few holes before I got ready to go to work. And I remember hearing the commentators always say, just not once, but always say, that the important thing about golf is not to focus on your opponents and to watch the scoreboard, but to compete against yourself and to try and beat the field, try and beat the course. So it's not about competing against other people, but you're actually competing against the course. And it's quite profound, actually, because a lot of people get caught up in the vortex of competing with other people just for the sake of competing against other people. And don't get me wrong, Tony Robbins always says that competition is healthy. Competition is good as long as you're doing it for the right reasons. You're not trying to keep up with the Joneses just for an egotistical perspective, but you're trying to benchmark and baseline yourself against others so that you can grow, you can expand, you can lean just outside your comfort zone so that you can slowly get better and better, because we need to get better. We need to grow and develop in our lives, because at the end of the day, contentment, happiness and joy, according to the big man Anthony Robbins, comes from this process of growth and development and being able to do things that you couldn't do before, or at least be able to maintain things that you could do before for a longer period of time in your life. Because the reality is that we're living in a world that is constantly changing. Just yesterday I was over there at the Fingal Bay Spit, which connects Fingal Bay mainland with a place called Shark Island, and in the middle there is a sandbank, or a spit of sand. That spit of sand had disappeared for about 3 years since before COVID. There were a couple of massive storms up here over a couple of years which washed away all of that sand. And with the washing away of that sand, the connection of the mainland, which is this side here, to Shark Island was not possible. And a lot of people have died over there over the years. And I was speaking to a mate of mine that I was working with just recently, Steve, and his surname will come to me shortly. And he said that he was crossing that just recently, and he had his boxer with him. And as he was crossing, the waves were starting to go across it, and it was like quicksand. His leg went up to his thigh when he stepped into that sand there. And if it wasn't for his quick thinking, where he was able to grab and call his beloved, loyal boxer to his side, it wasn't until he was able to grab the collar of his boxer and get the boxer to start moving so he could extract his legs from that sticky, sucking quicksand in the middle there, that he was able to get out there without impacting or affecting his safety. But as I say, lots of people have perished over there over the years, and it is quite dangerous. But it's obviously, this year we've obviously had some more storms which have blown back the sands. And I remember back then people saying, the sandbar is gone forever. We'll never ever be able to go across to Shark Island ever again. But I remember the locals back then saying, no, that's all BS. The sandbar goes and comes back, and it's a regular thing that happens over the years. And that's one of the beauties, one of the benefits of having hindsight and having to gain the benefit of experience, where you can see patterns of nature. You can see things that are habitual and happen over time, and the past and the history recurs time and time again, over and over again. May not happen exactly the same way every single time, but it does happen in a similar sort of way. And similarly to that, the sandbar has now returned, and I did cross over it the other day and got to the other side with my sister-in-law, Elpida, who was visiting here from Greece, and she enjoyed the experience. And it's a little bit like a Moses path, the path that was carved out in the ocean, in the sea, where Moses was able to get his people to the other side, and the waters came together and drowned the Egyptians, the enemy who was chasing them. So a beautiful place, and hence why I do my Jim's 5 a.m. clubs, because it does give me an opportunity to showcase the beauty of this country, showcase the beauty of wherever I am, and overlay it with a message of empowerment. And today we're talking about all of the good things that Anthony Robbins has given us over the years, and we're talking about how competition is important, but the most important competition that we should have is the competition that we have with ourselves. And Anthony Robbins goes on to say that the most important thing that we can do in our lives is to make promises and to keep promises. And whilst it's important to keep promises to other people, to keep promises to our partners, our children, our grandparents, our work peers, everybody else in our lives, it's great to be all things to all people. But the most important promise that you'll ever get to make and keep, the promise that will change your life forever, are the promises that you make and keep to yourself. And why do I say that? Is that we need to be competing against ourselves. We need to be lifting the standard wherever possible without making a fuss about it, without letting everybody else know what we're thinking and what we're trying to do. We need to be able to first build confidence and trust with ourselves, where we make promises and we keep promises that we make, and we pat ourselves on the back when we deliver on those promises to ourselves. Because it's through these promises that we make and keep that we build our promise muscle. We build our ability to be consistent and to be honourable and to be trustworthy. And it's by keeping those promises to ourselves and doing the right thing and knowing how to make and keep those promises that we can then become a little bit more generous and extend those promises to other people. How many times have people said "I do" and that they get married and promise to stay with that person through good and bad, through healthy and unhealthy, to wealthy and unwealthy, and yet 5 or 6 years later they're going their separate ways. Now, it's a big thing to get married. It's a big thing to promise someone that you're going to serve them, that you're going to be by their side for the rest of their lives. You know, a lot of people make that promise, as we know and as we see, and don't keep it, because what happens is that initially, you know, we're happy to keep those promises. We'll do anything to capture people's attention. We'll do anything to keep their attention. We'll do anything to encourage them and to entice them to accept our proposal. But with time, we become selfish. We move from being servants to being masters. We move from being selfless to being selfish. We move from loving our partners to loving just ourselves. You know, we start to see our partners as our neighbours, but not only as our neighbours, but we start to see our partners as our enemies, the people that we should be fighting against, we should be, you know, working against, as opposed to working with and working for. So here comes the big test and the big call to action from the big man Anthony Robbins, is where he encourages people to be in relationships. He says every person needs to be in a relationship with a significant other. Even if you're hurt, even if you have suffered pain by being in a relationship, each person needs to have a relationship with a significant other. The first and most important relationship with a significant other, from a Greek Orthodox perspective, is that we need to be in a relationship with God. And that is the key call to action for all humans. We need to love God with all our heart, mind and soul. We need to serve God with all our heart, mind and soul. We need to ask ourselves the question at every decision point: is what I'm doing, thinking, contemplating right here and now going to serve God? Is it going to please God? And the second part of the equation is, am I going to love my neighbour as I love myself? With the clue, of course, being we need to also learn to love ourselves. We need to love God. We need to learn and receive God's love. We need to learn to love ourselves. And once we've got enough love for ourselves, our cup will overfilleth, and we will then be in a position to be able to express and serve other people with endless amounts of love and appreciation and gratitude. Because then and only then we realise the importance of being one with God and being one with our families, our friends, our society, our community, and even with our neighbours and with our enemies, where we learn to forgive. Because at the end of the day, if we can't forgive, then how can God forgive us? You know, we're letting God down all the time, just like our partners, our children, our family, our extended family, our friends, our work peers, ourselves. Now, we're all letting each other down all the time. And if we just loved the people who just did things for us all the time, then we'd be pretty upset and pretty disappointed, because we're always getting let down. We're letting other people down. We're also letting other people down, and we don't even know that we're letting them down, which is the funny part. So what we need to understand is that we need to express God's love, and God's love is unconditional love. No, we're letting him down all the time, and he still loves us. Judas let Jesus down all the time, but he still loved Judas. Jesus gave Judas opportunity upon opportunity to repent and to change his mind. At the Last Supper, he said that one of his people, one of the 12, were going to do the wrong thing. And that was an invitation for Judas to say, "Sorry, it's me, please forgive me." But he didn't. At the Mountain of Olives at Gethsemane, when Jesus was arrested, the Roman legion who came there to arrest him asked, "Which one of you is Jesus?" And Jesus said on 3 occasions, "It's me. I'm the one." He gave himself up. And yet Judas, after that, went and kissed him on the lips. And that was meant, or that is an expression of the betrayal of Judas. He didn't have to go and kiss him on the lips. He could have just kept quiet, and Jesus would have been arrested. He would have given himself up. And yet Judas, with his ego, with his power trip, wanted to show off and show humanity how evil and how despicable he was by going and betraying Jesus in public. So as I said, Jesus expressed his unconditional love for Judas and gave him opportunity upon opportunity to lament and to ask for forgiveness, and yet he didn't. And hence we too need to do the right thing, and that's why we need to, look inside of ourselves from time to time and to benchmark ourselves against ourselves. It's important, of course, to benchmark yourself against other people. It's important to benchmark yourself against your peers. It's important to try and align yourself with those who are achieving, who are living the life that is worthy of emulating and for you to live. But at the end of the day, you need to keep score, and you're the only one keeping score of your life, and you need to make sure that you're keeping score and benchmarking yourself against the people and the things that are worthy of being benchmarked against, the things that are going to have eternal value, eternal spiritual value, against the things that are going to get you to grow and develop in a way that's going to help you serve God and serve your neighbour, as opposed to just serving yourself and doing the things that are going to make you feel happy and important. So competition is great. Sometimes people overdo competition, and it leads to their destruction, and it leads to their distraction more so than their destruction. You know, a certain level of OCD is required in order to become a leader in your field. But we need to temper that with humility and with the ability to focus on the things that are going to be of most value to us. Because at the end of the day, a lifetime comes and goes quite quickly, and you don't want to be too obsessed and too focused on certain things, because it can lead you to distraction, as we say, and it can lead you to separation from your family, from your loved ones, and from God. But once again, we need a significant other in our lives, which was one of the points that I made before, which is a point that Anthony Robbins makes, and it's also a point that my Uncle George, my late Uncle George, used to say. And he used to say to me that for every person, there is at least one other person, one other match for them, which is quite encouraging and quite important to consider. Because, you know, people get married and you think that you're going to get married and it's all going to be lovey-dovey. But a great marriage is one where people support each other by all means, but also a relationship where people challenge each other in a loving and productive way to enable them both to grow and develop, to lean just out of their comfort zone. Because at the end of the day, if we're not growing and developing in our relationships with each other, if we're not growing and developing proportionately and in relative terms in our lives, then what's going to happen is that as the years go by, we're going to get further and further apart from each other. So there is a danger in one person within a relationship growing and developing dramatically, and the other person not growing and developing dramatically, because you grow apart. So that's why it is important for people to work together and to have relationship goals and to have partner goals and to have family goals, so that everybody understands and everybody can see what each person is trying to achieve, and to complement and supplement those growth goals so that we can all grow and develop at a particular rate and a particular pace, and for that growth and development to be compatible with the other people's growth and development, so that we leverage and we springboard off each other and not have one person growing at another person's expense. So I think I'll leave it there, everybody. So thank you very much for joining me on this episode of All That I've Learned from Anthony Robbins over the years. It's been a great morning. It's been a great opportunity for me to sit up here and reflect, because I've just done a vlog on how I feel about Newington making a decision to grow the school, but also to grow the school in a different way to what it's been in the past. Talking about co-education and including girls and women in the mix, and to basically turn their back on 160 years of wonderful, productive, excellent tradition. So I think I'll leave it there. So thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to coming to you again from a different place and with a different message of empowerment, where we go through all of the material that we've been able to come across over the years, where we can talk about it, where we can have a casual chat about it, and include life experiences, to contemporize it, to Australianize it, to Christianize it, and to put it into perspective, or to put it into a format that we can use and reuse over and over again, and to help pass on these brilliant lessons to future generations. Because at the end of the day, each and every person's role is to live, learn, and pass it on. And that's something that I'm trying to do right here, right now, today. Yassas, take care, and we'll chat again soon. Bye for now.